all day. And judging by some of you all's backgrounds, and I guess I should have asked this yesterday, Dana, a lot of you look like you're in classrooms and in offices. I see some people have masks and things like that. So I do recognize that I serve as the gateway, if you will, between you and the rest of your evening. But I promise I'm going to make this worth your time. So again, thank you for having me. And I look forward to learning and growing with you, Dana, and the rest of you all as well. Okay. So I titled this presentation, if you will, or really what's more of a conversation around the leadership journey and inventory. As Dana said, there are some competencies or some skills or some capacities that the school district wants you all to have, but I'm speaking it into existence. All of you are going to be principals. Some of you are going to be superintendents. Let's just go ahead and claim that and speak it into existence. One of the, if there is any silver lining or upside to this pandemic, I think that there has been a slight switch in terms of how teachers are viewed nationally. I, for one, believe that there's been a war on teachers and public education for more than 20 years. What we have seen with distance learning, parents are able, all parents have become teachers' aides, and the community, teachers, the world at large is now inside of our classrooms, and they understand the skills, the knowledge, the know-how, the counseling, the psychology, the craftsmanship that it takes to make our classes run smoothly and effectively. So I think that's one of the upsides to this pandemic, if you will. But I think what that has done is it's made me appreciate teachers all the more, even though I spent 20 years in the field. So again, I commend you all for taking what I consider to be one of the most important journeys of my life. The decision to become an administrator was the second most important decision I made beyond who I was going to marry. So I don't take this work lightly, and I appreciate the fact that you all want to be a part of this journey. Okay, so as Dana said, oops, hold on one second. We just had can you all see my screen? Sorry about that. Me and Zoom are kind of like the Detroit Pistons and their jump shots. Sometimes we're on, sometimes we're off. So we're going to try to get back on track. But a little bit about myself. I started my career as a special education teacher in Washington, D.C. I then became a special education coordinator. I then worked downtown for D.C. public schools. I later became a principal. I published my first book in February of 2020. I work as an educational consultant in the Washington, D.C. area, but across the country, working with schools, supporting strategic leadership initiatives, coaching and counseling principals. But my passion is the support for, beyond leadership, is the support for helping schools help Black boys and help boys of color. Those are the things that are most important to me. I'm also a father and a husband. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I'll be enrolling in a PhD program in next fall, the fall of 2020, at Howard University. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell. I don't want to spend too much time about myself. My hope is that Dana and Aldine will invite me back. So we'll spend a lot of time getting to know each other over the course of the next several workshops. But that's a little bit about me. The most important thing I want you all to know about me is I consider myself to be a student of education and best practices. And one of the things I always ask myself is, this particular object or item or paradigm that we're looking at? Is it the flavor of the month, or is it best practices? So that's how I approach the work that I jump into, okay? Our goals for this session, we're going to define leadership. We're going to articulate your why. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. We're going to take an inventory of leadership capacity, examine some of our values as educators and people, and then we're going to plot a path for our own professional growth and development. Okay? Is everyone with me so far? In terms of housekeeping, as I said earlier, I know that I am the gateway between you and the end of the day. So I would say to you, take care of yourself. There's no judgment here if you need to turn your camera off or be off screen, but this will be relatively interactive. I do ask that as we go into breakout rooms, if you can, in fact, show your, you'll definitely need to unmute yourself, but if you could show your camera, then please do so. Engage in the content as you would want students in your classroom to engage in the content. Mute yourself when you're not speaking so we can be aware of the backgrounds and engage with the speaker and those who are asking and answering questions. This last bullet says some of the questions may go into the chat feature. That's actually not true. I want to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have a question, unmute yourself and just interrupt. Do not write your question in the chat box. Just go ahead and interrupt, and I will try to address your question right then and there. Okay? For the sake of our conversation, we're going to define leadership as the process of influencing either individuals, teams, groups, organizations, etc., to accomplish predetermined goals under a set of defined values. There are many other definitions of leadership. John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Stephen Covey says that leadership is getting people to do something that they otherwise wouldn't do. But for the sake of this conversation, this is the definition that we'll be using. What I ask of you, for each of you, is to make sure you have a definition for leadership yourself. You need to have your own personal definition, whether it's something that you create or something that you take from a book that you've read or other outside resources, okay? You don't want your staff, you don't want the outside community or other people defining what leadership is for you, okay? So what is your why? We're gonna stop for a minute, and I want you to, if you have a piece of paper close, this is where we kind of jump into our ice breaking. I want you to answer the question, why do you want to be a principal and or maybe an assistant principal? Just on a piece of paper, go ahead and write that out. And what we're going to do, we'll all unmute ourselves. I stopped sharing my screen. If you can write it down, that would be great. If you know it, that's great, but I asked you to write it down because we're gonna do something with that piece of paper a little bit later during our time together. So just take a few minutes and reflect, write that down, and we'll say in another 2 minutes, Dana, we'll start calling on people to share their responses. And the question is, why do you want to be a principal and or an assistant principal? Do we have a volunteer who would like to go first? We're all going to go. When we call you, tell us, introduce yourself, tell us your first and last name, position, and what school you're at, assuming you're at a school. If you're in central office, let us know that too. So introduce yourself, tell us your title, school you work at, and then tell us your why. Does anyone want to start us off? Go ahead, Miss Cicely.
Yes, that's correct. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cicely Pinkston. I cover Magnet High School. I'm a science skill specialist here now, and we serve 9th through 12th grade, and I'm over science.
Good to meet you.
I want to be. I'm sorry, sir.
I said good to meet you.
Thank you. It's very simple. I want to be an AP because I want to help the teachers be the best version of themselves instructionally. It's just that simple. Awesome. I really love seeing the teachers just doing better because the students actually do better, and just seeing the teachers happy with their overall performance, it makes me feel good. So that's why.
Awesome. Thank you, Cicely. Someone else?
I'll go. I'm Bené Thomas Jones, and I'm a skills specialist at Carroll Elementary.
Good to meet you, Bené.
Nice to meet you as well. My why is because, truthfully, I just want to build meaningful relationships that elicit dramatic growth and positive change with students and teachers and the community in a whole.
Dramatic growth. I love it. Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
I guess go ahead, Miss Paula, Dr. Paula, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm not Dr. Paula yet, but I received that. Thank you. I am Lakeisha Pollard. I am currently one of the assistant principals at Griggs Primary School, where we have pre-K and kinder. So I actually want to be a principal because I want to inspire other teachers to get out of their comfort zone. I want them to know that they too can become a leader regardless of where they started from. And then going back to my students, the students always come first. I want the students to understand that regardless of their background, where they come from, they too can become whatever they dream that they want to be. So I want to be that positive change agent for not only the staff, but for our community as well as my students.
Isha, was that your reason for wanting to be an assistant principal as well?
It was. I had to learn to get out of my comfort zone, and someone had to push me to get out of my comfort zone because oftentimes we become complacent with where we are. And so because I was pushed, my goal is to do the same thing now for others.
Sounds like payback.
All right, I guess I'll go ahead and jump in. My name is Charles Land. I'm the associate principal at Nimmins High School, 9th grade campus. And my why, I truly believe my true calling is to be a servant leader. And I'm here to help others and inspire students to become and reach unimaginable goals, to reach their fullest potential, and also to help others just become their best version of themselves. So I'm here to serve and just help inspire others, and that's my why to continue on this leadership journey that I'm currently on right now. Yeah.
Awesome. It's good to meet you, Charles. Someone else?
My name is Robin Sweet, and I am the math skills specialist at Aldine Middle School. And my why is basically I need the students that are around me to know that their circumstances don't determine their future. I take it very strongly because I am a product of Aldine. I did grow up where my students went to school at, and they need to know that what they're going through now is not going to be their future, that they have, that they can reach whatever goals that they strive for.
It's good to meet you, Robin. We're going to talk for about 30 seconds towards the end of the presentation, okay? So it's good to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Hello, I'll go ahead and jump in. My name is Phoebe Pruitt, and I'm an assistant principal over at Hambrick Middle School. And my why is just basically answering what I feel is a call on my life to help. That has always been one of the things that has been the forefront, even back to college, selecting a career. I asked myself, what is it that I can do in order to help people? So teacher, skills specialist, assistant principal, that has always been the driving force. In life, there are times, and I can speak for myself specifically, we ask ourselves, what is my purpose? And, I have found that in life, and so I want to be able to lead others to be able to find their purpose, just to be a guide along the way, and not only just to preach or talk to people, but to also be a model of how to reach those goals, and how walking within what your purpose is can, bring you fulfillment along with success.
That was deep. You want to take over the rest of the presentation, Ms. Pruitt? That was real. Wednesday.
You got it. I want to hear what you have to say.
Wasn't ready for that. I was not ready for that. Go ahead and preach. No, it's all good. Thank you for sharing, Phoebe. Thank you.
Sir.
It's gonna be hard to follow her, but my name is Stephanie Clark Brooks, and we're on the same campus, Hambrick Middle School. She is one of my mentors. And I teach 8th grade science. I've been here now for almost 14 years. And my why is to bring change to education that yields productive and valued individuals. I want to be able to grow great teachers. I want to be able to be an example to them as well, to show them what instruction looks like, what it feels like on the inside when you get that, when the students get that aha moment and you're overjoyed because you brought them to that point. I want every teacher to have that experience in their life. And so that's my why.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Mr. Williams, good afternoon. My name is Daniel Blanson, and right now I am the Curriculum and Instruction Assistant Principal at Carver High School. And so my why is very simple, just to continue to impact all stakeholders, to make a difference in our students' lives by giving them opportunities, providing them with resources, being a support system for our teachers, and then visual representation. That really drives me. I want our students to see myself as I continue to serve and as I continue to lead. And it's very important for our young men to see that image. So that really drives me, Mr. Williams.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Daniel. Thank you for sharing.
My name is Crystal Alvaren. I'm a bilingual kindergarten teacher at Hinojosa. I've been here for about 12 years. I'm also a product of Aldine. I grew up at Aldine schools, graduated from MacArthur High School, and I still, till this day, live across the street from the house I grew up in. So I really want to be an assistant principal or principal one day to support teachers, to actually give them the tools they need so they can in return be the best they can for the students. Because when they're supported, when they have what they need, they go all out for their students. And at the end, the students are the ones that win, and that's why we're here, so our students can be successful.
Okay. And Crystal, according to my notes, you're the teacher of the year in your school. So
Yes, sir.
If I need to borrow some money for Christmas toys, you're the person I come see, right? Let's talk offline. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
My name is Terrell Jackson. I'm the Curriculum and Instruction Assistant Principal at Eisenhower Senior High. And for me, I'm a believer that your purpose will find you. I'm all about, I want people to reach the impossible. What people say is impossible, I want us to reach what is possible. And for me, it's like going to school every day is a joy. And I like helping my staff and helping students reach what people say that could not be done. So that's my why, to make sure that it becomes possible.
Thank you, Terrell. Did I pronounce that correctly? Thank you.
Terrell, yes, Terrell.
Terrell. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll go next. My name is Jose Diaz. Curriculum assistant principal here at Grantham Academy. Kind of my vision is, as far as my why, I want to grow my impact. In my role, I work daily with teachers, and I think I do a really good job of providing that influence. But, in that next role, I see myself growing not only those around me, but also growing myself into the leader I want to become. And really, I strive to provide opportunities to think about myself whenever I graduated. Graduated very, very high, top 10%, but didn't know what opportunities were available for me in terms of secondary education or careers. And so I strive every day to make sure the kids around me understand the opportunities they have to become whatever they want to do as far as in their careers, whether that's going to be work after high school or going into college. I want them to leave our schools knowing there is a way for you to be successful in your careers and provide for your families.
Good to meet you, Jose. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing.
I'll go. Good afternoon. My name is Artisha Holmes. I'm the assistant principal at Parker Elementary. We serve students in grades 1st through 5th grade. And my why is having a passion for leadership and leading others, being able to impact all our stakeholders by one important part, challenging the inequalities in education. And so that's my why.
Thank you, Artisha. Thank you for sharing.
All right, so my name is Anthony Nimmins. I am the science skills specialist at Hoffman Middle School. So my why is that I want to foster the growth of students through educators that have been empowered. And when I say that I want to foster student growth, I'm not talking about just academically. I think so many times as educators, we focus on academics and we don't focus on the entire person, the entire being of our students. So when I say that I want students to grow, I'm talking about just overall growth. In addition to that, when I say through teachers that have been empowered, I feel like in leadership, we have to empower others to be the best version of themselves, even for them to be better than they thought that they ever thought they could be. And then my other reason why, I want students to be able to see someone in leadership that looks like them. I tell them all the time that I did not see a Black male teacher until I got to Prairie View. And I don't want students to have to grow up not seeing people that look like them be successful.
Thank you for that, Anthony. It's good to meet you. Although brother, your accent is strong. Are you in a different part of Aldine than the other folk? How does that work? I'm messing with you, man. I'm messing with you. Happy Wednesday to you. Someone else?
Good afternoon. My name is Reginald Wright, and I serve as the history skills specialist at Aldine Middle School. I desire to serve as an assistant principal, and I'm going to read what I wrote. I desire to serve as an assistant principal to help ensure quality instruction that properly prepares young people for whatever they dream to do in the future.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Reginald. It's good to meet you, sir. It's good to meet you.
Nice to meet you all as well.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Samantha Versino. I am a bilingual instructional coach here at Worsham Elementary. I'm also a product of Aldine, and I owe this district so much. I was from kindergarten through high school. I graduated from Nimmins High School, and I feel like I owe this community so much, and this district has done so much for me, both personally and professionally. If you were to ask me a couple of years ago, the thought of being an AP would never have crossed my mind. Luckily, I was blessed to have my current leader who saw something in me. And we have some saying here in Aldine, iron sharpens iron. And so that is my wish and my desire to bring the best out in others, whether it be the students, teachers, the community. Thank you.
Awesome, Samantha. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
All right. My name is Jeremy Johnson. I'm the RTI specialist over at Anderson. I think this is my 10th year teaching. I'm working generally in education. The reason I want to be a principal or an admin, for that matter, is to have a better impact on my community. Like many others here, I am a product of Aldine. I went to Eisenhower, I went to Hoffman, I went to Stovall, I went to all these, I went to Drew. And I'm Acres home through and through. And I would love to be able to translate what the kids I grew up with, the parents that I hang out with are saying out there in the community, and translate it for people that are of the lay mind and don't understand what my community is trying to say to the world, and just be that voice, that speaker for my community and all of the North Side really, and try to make my mark on my community, just like Mr. Sylvester Turner, Slim Thug, all of them, but just in the academic sense, to show that there's many routes to the top, and there's many routes to being a leader and an educator and an influencer, not just what you see on Instagram and Facebook and this, that, and the third. Nice to meet you, Ms. Williams.
Okay, good to meet you, Jeremy. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer White. I am the instructional coach at Jones Primary. And a lot like Mr. Land and Ms. Pruitt, I enjoy serving. And I have noticed that as I take this journey to become an admin, my service have allowed me to be a better leader. I've noticed that as I serve the teachers on my campus, they are more apt to listen to me and follow my lead. And I know that is because I've built those relationships with my service. And thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good to meet you. Good to meet
you. I am Afton Coleman at Jones Elementary. I am the math skill specialist. And my why to be an assistant principal is to build a support system to build students in, as well as teachers, to be lifelong learners, as having strong core values, because I know that students and teachers learn in different ways and at different levels, and that we should be able to embrace it all with the relationships that we build with each other.
Awesome. And you pronounce your first name Afton?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good to meet you, Afton. Good to meet you. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, my name is Alicia Lewis, and I'm a math instructional specialist at Orange Grove Elementary. My why is so that I can have a greater impact on improving student learning. I do have a hand in that as an instructional specialist, but I think that it would be greater as an administrator, because then I can also work with building the capacity of teachers and being a stronger support for teachers. I also want to connect with the community and connect with families and let families see that we're all in this together in order to help their children be successful.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you for sharing, and it's good to meet you.
I think I'm gonna jump in. I think I'm the last one. My name is Lola Johnson. I'm the science skills specialist here at Meade Middle School. My why as to be an assistant principal, I'm gonna have to do like Dr. Wright did. I'm gonna have to read my notes. Is to help inspire and or train other students and teachers to become impactful and efficient in building relationships and being solution focused while growing instructionally. I feel like a lot of the downfall in our community as a people sometimes is because we like to kind of sit back and whine, which is my pet peeve. I know that's not the word a lot of people like to hear, but unless you come up with your own solution and your own plan to get over your challenge, you know, you'll never see the end. You'll never see the light at the end of the tunnel if you're never going to go through the tunnel. So as an assistant principal, I would basically love to have that reach to where I can show others, like, and inspire others to overcome their challenges by figuring out what works for them and going for it. Like, find your own solution and go for it. And of course, building relationships. That's what I feel like education is based on. We're the best experts on how to build relationships with others and make it impactful and make it meaningful to them so they are successful.
Thank you for that, Lola. It's good to meet you. Thank you for sharing. So I'm really bad at this. I will move on, and there'll be approximately 3 or 4 people who haven't gone. So let me ask the question. I wrote it down. Is there anyone who did not share? Okay, awesome. I'm going to reshare my screen. And I want you to keep your why. If you didn't write it on a piece of paper, write it on a piece of paper, because we're going to come back to it. And I want to say, I think that one of the things that ultimately happens when you give keynotes, presentations, workshops, is the belief that the facilitator or presenter is the expert in the room. And I can honestly say, in listening to these answers, I didn't jot down everything but people said, but ensuring quality, instruction, dramatic growth, changing people, I enjoy serving, impacting all stakeholders, being a pillar, helping people is where I find my joy, growing my impact so I can grow myself, and growing myself so I can grow my impact, impacting and challenging equity, fostering growth, having a bigger voice to help students. We are in this together. I circled that one. And then I think it was Lola. She said, stop the whining. And then I wrote, stop the whining and start winning. So I just have to say, I probably should tear this presentation up, because you guys are light years ahead of where I was when I started my journey. But be that as it may, let's go ahead and move on. But keep that piece of paper close to you, okay? Okay. According to the Aldine Public or the Aldine Independent School System's leadership definitions, and these are definitions, but I'm going to use the term skills, competencies. I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. So Dana, if you want to correct me at any point, feel free to do so. But we wanted to focus today on that first pillar, if you will, in terms of connecting, which entails cultivating relationships, valuing diversity, exhibiting integrity, right? Being the same person that you are in all spaces, that your values dictate what you do as opposed to how you feel, okay? Integrity, being the same person in all spaces, communicating clearly, and then critical reflection, okay? So those competencies highlighted in red they make up the first pillar, if you will, of how we connect. Then we have recognizing potential, which I think is one of the highest forms of leadership, particularly when we talk about putting people in a position to foster even more student achievement in our buildings. Risk-taking, supporting growth, celebrating accomplishment, learning from missteps. How do we evolve as educators? And how do we make sure that the people who we are responsible for shepherding to the next level, whether that be a parent, whether that be teachers, whether that be students, how do we make sure that they are evolving and growing as well? Establishing high expectations, and written and embedded in establishing is the maintenance of expectations. And we're actually going to speak about that a little bit later on. Being student driven takes ownership. I believe, and you don't have to write this down, but the highest form of adult maturity is taking ownership of what has happened. That notion of accountability, whether it's something that's really positive or whether it's something that's really negative. How do we own our results? Seeking feedback, and then challenging inequities, which we're also going to spend a wee bit of time on, if I can speed up. So I'm going to bore you all for a while, and I'm going to talk about my leadership journey. And my leadership journey is not your journey, but I wanted to give some context of making sure that regardless of where you are in your journey, there's some things that you can take with you to arm yourself, or you can be successful in all environments. So I was never captain of the football team. I was never captain of the debate team. I wasn't president of the dorm. I was not even on the football team or the debate team. I didn't graduate magna cum laude or anything of that nature. And I found myself serving as a principal of a school at the ripe age of 31 years old. And I had been seeking a principalship. And when my then boss, his name was Philip Campbell, when he called me and said, Desmond, we want to hire you for this position. I was like, really? I was so happy, so shocked, so amazed, so nervous, and so thrilled that it really was a life-changing event. But one of the things I found was I did not necessarily know that the things that got me to, the things that propelled me to being a great teacher, to being a great educator, to being a great special educator and understanding the special education process was not going to be enough to help me become a competent school leader, okay? As a matter of fact, can I tell you another story? This is kind of off script, but can I tell a story? When Mr. Campbell hired me, I was hired in April. The principal who I took over for had some health issues in January-ish, and the school moved rather quickly to find a new leader. So I was hired in April. And on my first day, Mr. Campbell called me. I would say it was probably about 6 o'clock in the morning. He said, Desmond, when you go in today, I want you to give a speech, and I want you to, inspire the staff, and I want you to give them your 5-point plan for what your vision of the school is going to be. And I said, well, Phil, we only have about 10 minutes before the school day starts. We're going to have a huddle, because we're going to have a huddle the first thing every Monday, and then we're going to have a debriefing huddle at the end of the day every Friday. He said, no, make it a speech. And I said, okay, I'm going to, you're my boss. I'm going to make it a speech. And I had this wonderful office that was a typical principal's office, but I also had a swing space, which essentially was a conference area with this huge conference table that could seat about 12 adults. And I had my own bathroom. So what he didn't know is I was already at work in my office. And as staff trickled in, they came in and, introduced themselves or reintroduced themselves to me, and they thanked me for taking a position, and they were wishing me luck and things like that. And our assistant principal, her name was Judy Busher. She said, okay, Desmond, you have about 2 minutes before you're going to have to start, but most of the staff is already out. So if you want to introduce or reintroduce yourself to people who haven't met you yet, you might want to come on out. So I went to the bathroom, and then I came out and I introduced myself to a few people. And then I think I gave probably the best 5 or 7 minute speech I had ever given in my life. And then when the bell rang and some of the buses started showing up to drop our students off, I went back into my office, and a few teachers came in, and one teacher said, Mr. Williams, that was really nice, but you have to zip up your pants. And throughout that day, teachers were coming into the office saying, Mr. Williams, that was really nice, but are your pants zipped up? And it was the most embarrassing thing ever. But I share that to say that we never want to forget where we started off in our journey, because what tends to happen to us as school leaders and aspiring school leaders is we spend so much time thinking about what we do not have. So I want each of you to promise yourself that you're going to not necessarily focus on where you are, but look at the growth that you've accrued over X amount of years, okay? And just make sure when you're giving your greatest speech that you're appropriately prepared to give your greatest speech. But focus on your growth, okay? And that's something that we tell our teachers and our students as well. You may have, scored in the 80th percentile, and you may be happy or disappointed with that score, but let's put that score in context, okay? And we're gonna talk a little bit more about context as we go on, okay? So in trying to figure out, in terms of my journey, I did not know that the things that helped me to be so successful as a teacher were going to do me literally no good serving as an administrator. And one of the things that my mentor had said to me is, if there's anything you ever want to know, it's in a book. And when I was 20 years old, one of my bosses gave me, I'm sorry. These are kind of how some of my days as an administrator, that's kind of how I looked at some days. But I will say I was very happy with the work that I was doing. I was 31 years old, but I lived by myself. I was single. I thought my why, the biggest impact that I could have on my people was to serve as a principal. So though I was on the ropes a lot and I was figuring a lot of things out as I went, I was very happy with the work that I was doing. I was very happy with my teachers. I was very happy with the results that we were getting. My biggest challenge was managing what I call, there are two pillars of management in school and in education. One is the pedagogy. How do we teach, and how do we make sure our teachers are doing what they need to do to prepare our students? That other pillar is this notion of the political. And the political is the relationships with our stakeholders, our families, our children, and our teachers. For those of you who are already working as administrators, you know you don't get to teach. The entire building becomes your classroom. So it's very important from a relationship perspective that the equipment, the furniture, the systems, everything in that building is functioning at optimal levels so that teachers can help and support and serve students, okay? Going back to this notion of leadership text, when I was 20, my first boss gave me the book, The Art of War. And what she said to me was, Desmond, this is the only book that you will ever need on leadership. And I said, okay, Dr. Johnson. And it took me about 2 weeks to read that book. I didn't necessarily understand it, but I said, probably between the age of 20 and the age of 31, I read The Art of War probably 6 or 7 times. And it served me to some degree, but at other times it didn't. Then a little bit later on, I had a mentor / friend who was also a principal at that time. He said to me, Desmond, the only book you will ever need to lead in schools is John Maxwell's The 21 Laws of Leadership. So I went out, I purchased a copy of the 21 Laws, and I read probably 70% of that book that first weekend. I bought the audiobook and listened to the entire audiobook that weekend. And when I went back to work on Monday, I was like, I'm good, I'm set. And some of our results didn't change. A little bit later, another principal said to me, no, Desmond, The Art of War is old. John Maxwell is old. You need to go back to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I said, well, this book was published in the in the late 80s, said mentor said, Desmond, this is the book that you need. What's my point? All of these books have value, but one of the things we're going to talk about today is this notion of context. And another word for context is, what is the wisdom that is needed in order to make the knowledge from these particular texts work for you in the environment that you're working in? Okay? So I am going to stop sharing. I want everyone to take a break, just kind of woosah for a second. We're going to talk a little bit more about my leadership journey because I wasn't self-aggrandizing there. It does have meaning. What we're going to do, Dana, we have 20 people. If we could create 5 breakout rooms, what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm going to present you with a scenario. And in the scenario, and what we'll do is we'll cut and paste it and place it in the chat. I want you to read the scenario with your group members. I want you to decide individually what you would do with that scenario. You don't have to come to a consensus. This is your own individual belief about what you would do in that particular situation. And then we'll come back, we'll share out when you all are in your groups, choose someone, or if someone could self-select to kind of talk about or give a 1-minute overview of what your team discussed, okay? So if I could, this first scenario, I'm gonna read it really quickly. It says, the new principal is aware that Ms. Thomas has sleep apnea and is unable to perform her work duties. He often walks into her room and sees her asleep. She is a dedicated aide for a student who needs around-the-clock supervision. Ms. Thomas has been a faithful employee for over 30 years. The assistant principal sees it as a hot-button issue, but actively avoids it out of fear of pushback from other staff members. What should the new principal do, if anything? So I posted that in the chat. Dana, can we get our, because I can't create breakout rooms.
Okay, I don't see it in the chat. Do you all see it in the chat yet? No, we don't see it in the chat.
So it's there, you kind of have to, oops. Sorry.
Oh, here it is, okay.
I'm telling you, I'm off like the Pistons with our jump shots, my fault.
Okay, so did everyone get a chance to copy it? Because I'm getting ready to send you to your groups. All right, here we go. Let me have, I'm going to, oh, there she is. She moved. Okay, I was going to send Lola somewhere else. Okay.
This is taking much longer than I thought.
That's okay.
It's moving slower than I thought is probably a better way of putting it.
Okay, let me see. I think someone's coming in. I'm going to send them to the group. Okay, so let me send her to another group. Hold on. Hold on, Ms. Jackson. Let's see, there you go. All right, there we go. No, but it's good.
Oh, I'm glad you like it, because I haven't been kicked out of any place this nice. I've been kicked out of a lot of places.
No.
No place this nice. So yeah.
I think they're good. They're good. They're good. You know, and I was sitting here like a proud parent just listening to some of their whys. A lot of them I actually interviewed for them to enter into this process. But I haven't really had time to get to know them like that. But, you know, and then through Zoom, it's really hard, you know. So I was really proud of them. Really proud.
So the pushback is going to be to define the impact.
Yeah.
I have 13 people said impact, right?
I agree.
The goal is going to be to define impact. And my theory, right? I haven't tested this out. I've done something similar, just talking to principals and school leaders. Impact comes up all the time. It takes us time developmentally as new leaders to define what that impact is going to look like. Right. And that's where this conversation, I think this document, the competencies is great. But one of the other things that I find, Dana, is school leaders sometimes get overwhelmed. And the goal is to kind of think about, like, what are the 3 or 4 things that I keep with me at all time? What are those philosophies?
Right.
The goal is to tie these scenarios with their values, but then to tie these axioms I'm going to give at the end, get them to pick some of those up, because if they pick those up, they're going to collect 85 to 90% of the competencies that you all want for them. So that's kind of where the game is. And I'm going to challenge them to put that why in their wallet, under their pillow, in their wallet, and to define it and refine it over time.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we want to go with that. And do I have the capacity to
visit? You want to visit a room or two, or no?
I do, but if you could just tell them 1 more minute and then we'll come back. I think the goal is to do 3 of these. I don't think we'll have time to do all 4.
I just sent them a message, 1 minute remaining. Okay. And then I'll take a look and see. I'm not bringing them back.
But yeah, there were some very inspiring, whys. And I think we take charge of our destiny, and we're able to more readily define our vision of a school when our why is better defined. That's kind of what this is about. Because I don't want to assume that these people, like this 23 people, don't know what they're doing. Like, this, you got it, but let me help you refine it so that when you have 30 people behind you, they know exactly what you're saying, so everyone stays on message. That's kind of the, I'm not gonna say that because that's heavy for Wednesday. Like, I would need 3 days, but that's where I'm going.
But I've been working even with our first year APs and principals around identifying how you're going to measure and monitor, you know, like what is that going to look like in result? And so most of them have tried to tie it to not this group, but I think that's an area of growth for everyone, thinking about what data point am I going to use to determine the impact that I'm making. So, but this group, we haven't gotten there. So are you ready for me to bring them back? Let's see. Okay, coming back. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they have thought that far ahead. We'll see. It's funny because this is a familiar scenario for me, so I'm interested to see. This happened at a high school that I supported. So
a lot of Miss Thomases in Texas. It's a lot of Miss Thomases in Texas.
Probably, I would hope it's not a lot. Hopefully, we don't have any in Aldine, but
yeah, Texas, but not Aldine. Yeah.
Not Aldine, no. No. 2 seconds. Okay, so I think we are all back. All right.
Awesome. Is there a group that wants to go first to kind of share out the conversation, or maybe even share what you would do in this scenario?
So I'll go ahead and start off. Our group had a lot of good conversation. So we kind of started off with number one is going to be the issue needs to be addressed in some capacity. And we would start off with just identifying, how problematic the situation is, and just understanding this situation that came up as far as sleep apnea. Is there medical documentation, something along those lines, so you can better understand exactly what is occurring for this staff member. And then once you get that information, that understanding, reaching out to HR to identify, is there a way that we can accommodate this schedule due to the medical condition? And if so, how can we accommodate it? If it's not something we can accommodate, then we're going to have to identify a workable solution so this staff member can properly supervise the students on campus. Additionally, Mr. Blanson brought up that, bringing in the assistant principal who's been seeing this and has not addressed it, it could be a learning opportunity where you show them and provide guidance on how they could address this whenever they see these issues and how we can handle it most appropriately on campus.
I just over there shining. Okay.
I think Team 4 wanted to go next.
Oh, great, Team 4.
Well, I definitely, Team 4, that's great collaboration. And definitely a lot of things Mr. Diaz said we didn't really get to, but those are very important points. Because in these type of situations, you have to consider employee rights, and you have to consider medical conditions and all those things that impacts our decision. But for us, it was immediate safety concern. You have a safety not only the student, but also the individual that's sleeping in that classroom. So we'll have to have those conversations, those tough conversations, even though she's been with us for so long. So we all have some knowledge of what's been going on. But unfortunately, we'll have to look to move this individual at some point because it's just an extreme safety concern. So we'll have to have some documentation in place. We have to have those conversations, and then at some point, we'll have to send Mrs. Mary Lou on a merry way, either place her somewhere else in the building where she's least impacted for safety and instruction, or maybe she can have a happy retirement. But at some point, we'll have to move on. Unfortunately, we don't want to go that level, but we got to do what's best for the kids, and right now, this is not a good situation. So we have to consider all factors and then proceed with the facts that we receive.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Land. Thank you. Is there another group that wants to go? And for the interest of time, after this group goes, we will move to the second scenario, and we'll move on to the next scenario and give the other group an opportunity to share out first, assuming we select into the same groups for the second scenario.
Okay, I could go for our group. So for our group in group 2, we talked about definitely making sure that we had documentation on file to make sure that we could look at a plan. So the principal's already aware of it. So we discussed working with the AP, coaching them on what are some goals and steps that we can put in place to ensure safety. We also looked at, we could place, dealing with the master schedule and the sections, you might want to reduce her class size, and you possibly could place a co-teacher in that classroom. So you have 2 certified teachers, as well as maybe a SF para. And if you place SF kids in there, then you have 3 individuals that could assist in there. Due to her sleep apnea, we would look at her documentation and also possibly look at her conference period. If she has a pattern of when it occurs, maybe we give her a conference period earlier throughout the day, in the middle part or the afternoon, to be able to assist with that, since she is one of our employees. We also looked at a collaborative plan between the AP, the principal, and the teacher, and possibly the lead teacher or the department chair, to put plans and procedures in place for the teacher and with the co-teachers within the classroom.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Thank you for that. kudos to you all. If your group had a conversation about employee rights, kudos to you. If your group had a conversation about student safety, kudos to you. If your group had a conversation about the accountability for the assistant principal, kudos to you. First and foremost, this is an issue of student safety, right? So when we talk about the competencies, this notion of being student-centered and being data-driven for the sake of students is first and foremost. Whether you are public, private, independent, or public charter, the first step is ensuring student safety. HR deals with, employee rights and things of that nature. So kudos to all of you. I don't want us to think about this in terms of right or wrong. I just want us, I want us to have a conversation about what we would do in that moment, and just keep your ideas in your head as we move forward, okay? So I'm going to give you the second scenario. I'm cutting, I'm pasting, but I'm also going to press enter this time. I'll read it before we go into the breakout rooms. You guys will have it in the chat. It says, Ms. Terry is a great teacher. She is concerned about her colleague, Jennifer, who works hard and is starting to burn herself out. Jennifer is snapping at her children more often. She tends to drift in meetings and does not lend her voice like she typically does. Ms. Terry lets it ride out for a few weeks, seeing it as a trend, but the behaviors continue. Should Ms. Terry do anything? Okay, that's our second scenario. Get with your group members, talk it through, and then decide what you would do if you were Ms. Terry in this scenario, okay? So Dana, are you physically at work? Okay. Are you a 8 to 5 person, or what time does your day officially end? You're on mute.
Okay, there it is. Okay, my mouse half works, but it's usually 8 to 5. Yes. Unless we have a meeting that begins at 7:30, then yeah, but it's usually 8 to 5. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you work in person every day?
We do. We're all back. We all came back in August, like late August. We all had to report back full time in the building.
So are you physically out of school, or are you in central office?
Central. I'm in central. Mm-hmm. But district-wide, everyone had to return back to the building because we were working from home all summer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
is there a hybrid model for students, or are all children back? Like, what does that look like?
So you had to select which method you wanted, either face-to-face or virtual, but you can't go back and forth. You have to remain virtual for a 6-week period, and then you can switch over to face-to-face. So the window just closed Friday for students who want to start in the next semester, virtual or face-to-face. So you have to go a full cycle before you can make the change. But teachers are actually delivering hybrid. So they have students in their class and they may have a few on Zoom. So they're doing both.
Yeah, in some of my consulting, I've helped schools retrofit their buildings to accommodate students. And this is private schools. But the question or the demand that I keep giving is that some families want their children in schools. And if we have teachers who are willing to come back, we should think outside of the box and populate schools with those children. So maybe Dana is not teaching 5th grade this year at Aldine Elementary. She might be teaching kindergarten at, Desmond Williams Elementary School. Because I sincerely believe that many Black and brown children are gonna fall behind. I was talking to a former coworker and she was talking about this notion of behind. She was like, behind what? Behind the scope and sequence? Behind who? Behind where they were last year? And I said to her, behind white people. Because she's what I would call a woke white woman, and they're just toxic to the degree that they won't confront. Not confront. They have lots of blind spots. And I was trying to get her to see that regardless of the entire world being in a pandemic, there's still judgment consistently placed on Black and brown children. And it's not readily seen by white people who are on the front lines caring for those children. So she was like, behind who? I was like, Shannon, you need to bring kids back.
Want me to give them a minute?
Yeah, it's late.
So some superintendents have made the call to bring students back if you're failing. Like, they're not going to continue to provide or offer virtual learning if you're failing. That hasn't been mandated in our district, but there are some superintendents throughout the state who've made that call, that they're just not going to continue to try to teach your children virtually when they're failing. Like, they have to have them in person. So, and a lot of it is hard, with engagement. Students are not logging on, or their cameras are off. And so if that happens, they're getting a little bit more assertive and kicking them out, or, exiting them out of the virtual class, because they need them to be engaged. And it's already a luxury for you to be able to learn at home. So if parents are not going to fully support virtual learning, they're not going to continue to put up with your cameras off, or you're clowning on the Zoom, or, being disruptive virtually. So yeah, it's been a struggle.
It's a mad world.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to close them out. You ready? Okay. Let's see what they have to say.
Jennifer, is that Auburn University I see in the background?
It is.
What is GCU? What is that?
Grand Canyon University.
Oh, okay. I definitely knew that. That's an online for-profit university?
That I'm not sure. But Grand Canyon, I took my classes online.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of Grand Canyon. I just never saw like the colors.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yeah, but I've heard of. They're actually really popular in this area. Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. I think we're all back now.
Were we in the same breakout rooms? Okay, so
yes.
A group that didn't get to share for scenario 1, would you like to go first this time?
Yeah, so we were in breakout room 1, and what we discussed, we discussed the relationship building that should take place on the team, to the point that if the relationships have been built, the lady in the scenario should have been able to go to Miss Jennifer and have that conversation with her. And I gave them an experience that I had of my own, and I'm gonna say this just because Ms. Brooks is here on this call with us. My first year teaching, Miss Brooks taught in the classroom next door to me. And she noticed that I was acting a little off at one point in time. And she came and because of our relationship, she said something to me about it. And what it was, because I didn't even realize that I was going off on the kids the way I were. But unfortunately, it was leading up to the 1-year anniversary of my grandfather's death. And my grandfather raised me. And although I didn't notice what was happening, she did. And she had enough respect for me and for the kids. And we had that relationship that she was able to come and have that conversation with me.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Anthony. Thank you for sharing that. Shout out to Ms. Brooks. Would another group like to share out what you discussed?
Yes, group 3. We discussed actually 3 different scenarios. The first scenario that came, or 3 answers to the scenario. The first discussion was a teacher to teacher, being able to go to the other teacher to talk about it, to see if any support is needed. But then we also talked about the fact that if the relationship was not there, then it's a possibility, you know, that the teacher may not feel comfortable going to the other teacher. And so that's when the 2 other conversations came up. One was possibly going to a counselor to talk to the counselor and bringing the counselor in to see how can we support you? Is it anything wrong? We're here to help, maybe balancing the caseload. And that was in place of going to an administrator. For me, I was the one that stated, you know, if the relationship wasn't there between the teachers, possibly going to the administrator. Because I know me as an administrator, I do try to build those relationships to where, you know, any teacher can come to me and talk to me about whatever, and then also approaching a teacher based upon a concern brought to me, you know, being able to go to them with no judgment, you know, of course, noticing it myself first before going to that particular person. So it's different ways to handle it, but we talked about the main piece is that relationship that has been built prior to having the conversation with the teacher.
We have 2 minutes. Do we have another group that wants to share out, kind of give an overview of their discussion? Okay, that's fine. Let's go to, I think we're going to skip the 4th scenario because I just think we're going to have a very interesting dialogue here. So let's skip to scenario 4. I'm going to cut and paste this as well and place it in the chat box. Okay. It says Desmond Williams is a principal of an all-boys school in Washington, D.C. that is 100% African American. He is saddened that the kindergarten teacher, Ms. Lott, is moving into administration at another school. Mr. Williams' boss, who will remain nameless, implores him to hire a white teacher to bring more diversity to the staff, as all classroom teachers are Black. Mr. Williams, who has a great relationship with his boss, does not want to hire a white teacher for the sake of hiring a white teacher. What should Mr. Williams' boss, who will remain nameless, do, if anything? Okay, you gonna break them up, Dana? and we can bring them back at, I have 5:23. We can bring them back at 5:27.
Okay.
I think what we'll do for this one
Mhm.
is as opposed to asking groups to share out for the interest of time, we'll just ask 2 or 3 people to give their initial reactions. This is not true, but it's damn close
Mhm.
to being true. And I think there's a lot to unpack here.
And I think that happens, that we think that we hire based on that and not who's the actual fit for the school, you know, or for the position, like the best candidate. That happens a lot. So this would be interesting to see how, you know, they respond and if they've even experienced that.
This is
Or
interesting.
if they are even aware that they experienced it, right? Like it happens all the time. I tell people all the time, you know, just having some inside knowledge that they're probably not going to go with you. They're probably going to go this route, you know? And it's not always the best route. So we'll see. We'll see.
So were you, how long did you, how long were you a teacher, Dana?
I was a teacher about almost right at 4 years, a little over 4 years. And so I think I came out of the classroom October of starting my 5th year.
Okay. Did you serve in school leadership?
I did. I started out as a literacy coach, and then for the campus, then I became the district literacy coordinator. And then the district where I worked, they actually closed it. The state closed it for years of, I guess, finance issues and some other things at the high school level. So I moved over to Houston ISD as a curriculum specialist and went into the role of an AP, became a principal, left HISD with our chief of HR, who became a superintendent, went over to Spring, served as a principal, went back to HISD as a principal supervisor, and then I just joined Aldine with Dr. Goffany in August of this year. So.
Okay, so you're new in this role.
Yeah, I kind of served in this capacity in HISD, but I was more of a supervisor.
Okay.
And so I was responsible for a little of the professional development, but for the most part, I was all over the place. I did the grievances, the investigations, like I did everything. So it wasn't just solely go over and build capacity. It was build capacity and do everything else. So it's kind of like a super principal. So, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. One day you have to give me and I think Erica gave it to me and I just didn't get it, but the relationship between Aldine and Houston and Harris County, and I don't get that. So
okay, I'll have to share with you, but yeah, because they're like a service center. Harris County is like a service center, so we go through them for professional development. But yeah, Houston has several districts in the Houston area, and the Houston ISD sits in the center of the city, and everything else sits around in the suburbs. So
Houston is not just Houston.
Because we live in Aldine is in Houston, but it's not Houston ISD.
Oh.
Yeah.
Aldine is in Houston?
We're in Houston.
Why is it called Aldine?
Because that's the name of the district. We have Spring ISD, Aldine ISD, Cythera ISD, we have Goose Creek, Sheldon, and all of these districts are surrounding HISD. So HISD is the largest, but then when you move out into the suburbs just a little bit, then you start to get districts that surround Houston.
Okay, man, that's interesting.
It is.
Okay.
It's big.
Okay. You want to bring them back for the
They should be. Oh, there we go. They should be coming back now. Yeah, and we're gonna go until what, 5, a little after 5, or I think we're good either way.
If I don't shut my mouth, I'll have us here till 6.
Ooh,
but we have about 15 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, you just have to you have to cue the Grammy music to let me know to stop talking.
Okay. They're almost back. Counting down. they're coming in. I see some smiles on you guys' faces, so sounds like you knew exactly how to handle that scenario.
Fire that guy. He's gonna mess it up for everybody. Can't have people going rogue. You gotta get rid of this guy.
Going to the board on him and TEA and
All of that. All of those things.
All right. I think we're all back now. We're ready.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as opposed to asking a group to share out for the interest of time, does anyone want to just share what they would do if they were signing Mr. Williams's check? Let's put it like that. What would you do?
So one of the things that we talked about would be, rather than kind of just putting the implementation of just telling, hey, it has to be this way, I would look at the search, and I would kind of implore him to just diversify the search in terms of his search pool to make sure he's given himself the best opportunity to search out the most qualified candidate. And knowing that we are attempting to have this candidate be white, I wouldn't force him to only bring in white candidates. I would want him to bring in the best candidates, but I want him to specifically give him that opportunity to diversify the search. And then I would probably if I really wanted to support my principal, I may be a part of this search process on this campus to make sure we found the best candidate to help my principal in his principalship. Because if I'm gonna hold him accountable, I expect him also to kind of know that I support him in whatever his decision-making is gonna be. And that'd be for, if I'm gonna toe the line as his boss, then I'm gonna support him in the process. Between me, you, and everybody else, I would never put my principal in this position, but if I did, I would support him the best way I could to make sure I gave him all the tools to make the best decision.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. In our group, that's kind of sort of what we discussed with regard to if diversity is something that we want to focus on and something that's an explicit concern, then you would offer your assistance in, steering or finding candidates. And if a quality candidate who's white or Caucasian is not presented, then perhaps we could see about increasing Mr. Williams's budget, possibly partnering with a college or university to host student teachers that can bring in some diversity, or maybe designing a mentorship program and bringing diversity in that regard. But not necessarily pigeonholing or tying Mr. Williams's hand and saying the only candidates you can entertain is Caucasian candidates. Number one, because I believe there's a law against that. And we wouldn't want that same thing with any of the students that we serve, seeing as though they're 100% African-American males. We wouldn't want that same standard held against them if they're applying for a job either.
We talked about if they want to add diversity to the school, they can offer offer programs, offer Spanish, offer different cultural background programs, so you can encourage that diversity to come into your school. Not just saying it has to be a certain thing, but if you're going to offer a Spanish, you're going to offer different things, and you open up that window to allow it to be, okay, so we're looking for these things. Anybody can apply, and you're going to find the best candidate for that position. And also inviting diversity.
Crystal, I know I'm going to borrow some money from you. You're brilliant. I know you got a lot of money, so you can stay up on a call. I'm going to hit you up and send you my Cash App. Thank you for that. Someone else?
I speak for Group 4. We talked about the importance of creating a profile for the type of applicant we want to attract or search for our campus. Even though we know that we want to add diversity to the campus, we want to at least bring in the best applicant that we can find out there. So we'll create a profile that's aligned with our vision, looking for skill sets that will help benefit the students, so that we're not just looking for an individual with a certain color or race or anything like that. We're looking for the best quality individual for our campus, no matter what color, race, creed they may come from. So creating their profile will help us target that talent for our students.
Okay. I would love to hear from more of you, but in the interest of time, I was telling Dana as you were coming out the breakout rooms, I could keep talking and literally keep you all here until people just started logging off. This scenario is not true per se. It's quasi-true, if I could say that. And when we talk about these scenarios are not necessarily about right or wrong. It's about values. And we're going to talk about values for the rest of our time here. And Crystal, I was joking with her, but she implicitly raises the question, what do we mean by diversity? Right? She said, Crystal, and chime in if I forgot, because I didn't write down everything you said. We could bring in some dual language programs. We could think about possibly having, someone else said we could possibly have interns. We could partner with colleges to bring in people of other nationalities and ethnic groups to work with our students in various ways, but we wouldn't necessarily think about hiring a teacher for the sake of hiring a teacher. As I read through the standards, it said to challenge this notion of inequity. However, in the tagline with that, if you will, was maintaining access for all. And one of the questions that I always ask, and I want you all to think about this, is equal to who? Who are we creating equality for? And who are we implicitly and sometimes explicitly saying students need to be equal to? The other argument that I made with my boss, and at this point I had been, this was the end of my first year as a principal. It was the end of my 5th year as a school, and my boss / head of school had been there from the inception. And my 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, PE, music teacher, custodian, myself, and my boss, head of school, were all Black men. And we were joking because every year at the beginning of the school year, we have this luncheon for teachers, and the entire conversation was about football. And my boss said to me, where did you get all of these men from? And where did you get all of these Black men from? And I said to him, dude, it's an all-boys school. You're going to naturally attract Black men who are attracted to the mission. And it wasn't that I was purposefully trying to weed out this gender or this race. We just got super qualified candidates, and the best candidates for a lot of the positions, dare I say all of them, were these highly intelligent Black men who wanted to work with Black boys. The other argument, and this is again, I'm talking about values here. The other argument that I want to make is the data, right? When you talk about making data-driven decisions, if you are hiring for a pre-K through 2nd grade position, there's a 95% chance that that position is going to be filled by a female, right? By and large, our educators in early childhood are women. If my boss was asking me to hire a white female strictly because she was a white female, the data, in very stark contrast to what happens at the mid-elementary level, speaks to the discipline issues, the inequity, the bias, the inherent racism that white females hold towards boys of color because our schools are normed against the best of girls. So when you have a teacher who has a boy in her room, like we're taking race out of it for a minute, he does not sit as long, he is not as clean in quotation marks, he can't attend to tasks for as long, he's touching, he's grabbing, he's tactile, and all of those stereotypical tropes in terms of brain-based development that so often we kind of take for granted in teaching, all of those things lead to he's not really acting the way I need him to act in my class. When I said that to my boss, he said, well, you would just train her. And I said, and granted, there is no her at this point, right? He was like, you would just train her. And I said, well, thank you for telling me how I have to spend my day. But again, I'm challenging this idea of inequity because maybe, and this is something that you would answer for yourself in this question, maybe I'm saving a classroom full of kindergartners from dealing with those inequities, those biases, or maybe I am hindering my children from dealing with the diversity of having a Caucasian teacher in their classroom. It's up for discussion. The point is, it didn't sit well with my values. And one other caveat, the board, this was at a private Episcopal school, and the board, which was probably 80% white, told me under no circumstances, Desmond, we like you, we like what you do, what you're doing. You hire who you think is best. And I said, well, don't say that to me because my boss has told me to do this. But that's just another caveat to kind of add to the situation.
Hey, Mr. Woods, I have a question for you. In terms of you writing that question, just out of curiosity, why did you put in terms of what would you do if you were the boss in terms, and not say what would you do if you were the principal? Why did you choose the point of view being one versus the other?
You know what, I thought of it, you, as I said before, I'm looking at all of you as principals. What are you going to do when you have a smart, hard-charging, if you will, intelligent, caring person underneath you, and there's a values clash? We're going to talk about in the rest of our time, how do you manage the difficult conversations? One of the most important things you, as an administrator, is tend to the weeds. There's always an attack on values. And when there's an attack on values, you have to have those difficult conversations and bring staff, students, parents, stakeholders back in line with the values. And if they don't exhibit those values, they at least have to exhibit those behaviors. So that's a really good question, Jose. But I want you all to think of the question in terms of, I'm at the very top of the food chain, if you will. But this person underneath me is intelligent, dynamic, and has very strong views on what should happen. But we are at a values clash, okay? Because my boss's value, right, he was thinking the sustainability of the organization. And when I bring in potential donors into the building, who I'm gonna guess this is probably not right, but 85 to 90% of our donorship was from Caucasians. So they need to see, without my boss saying this, he was expressing they need to see some more white faces. My argument was, I'm being student first. His argument was, I'm being student first because I'm thinking about the overall health, financial health, and sustainability of the organization. Does that help, Jose? Okay, great question. Okay, I'm gonna reshare my screen. I kind of let the cat out of the bag. I'm gonna get us out here as quickly as possible because I really like you guys, so I can just keep on talking, but nobody wants that. So I know just in listening to and having these conversations and this dialogue with all of you that you are in a great place. What I want you to think about is, I may not have all of the competencies that I want. I may not have all of the competencies that I need, but I'm going to give you a few axioms that if you take them with you are going to serve you well in your journey. Okay. So the first axiom I have for you is to be a student and not a follower. You don't have to believe anything I say. Okay. You don't have to believe anything that I say. I just want you to think about what I say, reflect on it, right? One of the critical competencies, or one of the leadership competencies, is this notion of critical reflection. Think on what I say. It may not be right. You may think it's right now, and later on down the line, you have your own philosophy, or you strengthen your philosophy, and you may say, you know what Desmond said made sense then, it doesn't make sense now. But be a student, okay? Don't be a follower. Be a student. Study everything that's ever said to you or ever given to you in your journey. That is going to allow you to reflect critically. It's going to allow you to build relationships. As I think about some of these other competencies, this notion of evolving, thinking about race and racism and how we tackle that. You all are in a district, correct me if I'm wrong, Dana, I don't have the numbers in front of me, that's approximately 70% Hispanic and 23% African American. How do we create educational programming that works for them? That answer today in December of 2020 may look different than the answer in 2023 or 2025, okay? Be a student, not a follower. Axiom 2, I've already talked about this, but your chief job is to articulate your values, and then you have to protect those values at all costs. I'm going to challenge each of you, and I told Dana while you all were in that second breakout room, I've been kicked out of a lot of places, but no place as nice as this. So I hope you all invite me back. If that were to happen, I would challenge each of you to refine and hone your why. 14 of us in our why use the word impact. And I would ask you to define what that impact looks like. In my research and working with principals and assistant principals, it takes 3 to 4 years to really define what we want that impact to be. And then it can evolve over time, depending on the context of the school that we're working with. So when you say impact, what does that look like for you based on the skills, competencies, knowledge, know-how that you have at a particular moment? But Axiom 2 is relationship building. It is critical consciousness, culturally relevant content, looking at the bias in our textbooks and in our curriculum. It is a lot of the competencies that the district is looking for. So if you are able to think in terms of protecting the values, you're going to grow a lot. And again, I think the number one skill that you get from this is in living in this space, I should say, is how do we have those critical conversations, and how do we manage and encourage and lead the people who work in our systems, who work in our classrooms for the sake of student achievement and student growth. I think it was Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, who talked about student achievement in this very narrow way, thinking more consciously about what we mean when we say achievement, but how do we make sure that everyone in our building is working to maximize what we define as student achievement, okay? I'm moving kind of fast here, so If you have any questions, stop me. The third axiom goes back to, I believe it was the second scenario with Miss Terry and Jennifer. What does the generator plug into to stay generated? How are we taking care of ourselves? How do we stay and remain self-aware? And how do we stay in a space of self-maintenance? And I'm not asking this question because we're in the midst of a pandemic. Education in and of itself on any given day, in any given school, in any given setting can be very stressful. Can we as school leaders create an environment where teachers feel comfortable going to their colleagues and saying, you know what, Desmond, I noticed A, B, and C, and I noticed that you haven't taken a day off in X amount of time. Don't you think it might be time to use some of that sick leave, right? How do we foster those kind of relationships so that it's building wide? In any school, there are pockets of relationships and connective tissue where adults feel comfortable going to other adults and broaching those conversations. How do we foster an environment where that can happen and people don't feel attacked, right? We've all been impacted by trauma, but how do we help each other so that it does not define us, okay? What does the generator plug into? The other side of that question that is rhetorical, but how are you taking care of yourself? Everyone remembers the Emperor's New Clothes. There, in the Emperor's New Clothes, this snake oil salesman, if you will, sells the king these quote unquote beautiful clothes that are invisible. And in this parade, the king is walking down the street, and the belief is that these clothes are so beautiful that they're worthy of a king, and no one can see them unless you are of luxury. So people want to believe, right, that they are worthy of kingship. So they're pretending that they see these clothes. And then this little boy says, dude, you're naked, right? How do we create an environment where we're receiving feedback from the teachers in our building saying, you know what, Desmond, that's not gonna work. You're walking down the street naked. Or you, Mr. Williams, as our school leader, we think you need to take a mental health day. Or have you noticed that you're doing A, B, and C, and D? So that fostering that environment from teacher to teacher, and from staff member to staff member, or from staff member to parent, parent to student, student to teacher, also moves up the quote unquote hierarchy, where our teachers and our families feel comfortable saying to us, you know, you're walking down the street naked, okay? Axiom 4, and let me say this, none of these axioms are more important than the other. They're not in any particular order. This is just it's kind of a randomized order. Axiom number 4, all staff and student actions and interactions are designed to end racism and promote peace and harmony amongst all living things. There is no beginning, there is no endpoint to this notion of ending racism. That work is an ongoing task. There's a book, I'm not saying you should read it, called Faces at the Bottom of the Well by Derek Bell. Derek Bell was a lawyer and a law professor from Harvard University, and he is considered to be, in a lot of circles, one of the godfathers of critical race theory. But what he says is that racism is not going anywhere. But in the permanency of race, those who are fighting against racism can take comfort in knowing that they always have to be on guard to do the work of ending racism. So how do we combat bias in our curriculum? How do we combat bias in our hiring practices? How do we break instructional inequity? so that teachers are not standing in front of the room talking at children? How do we create content that is designed to liberate our students as opposed to preparing them to go work for other people? If students want to graduate and matriculate to college and go work for other people, that's fine. But is our pedagogy, is our curriculum preparing students to go out and fight what I believe to be the biggest problem on the planet? Are they being prepared to fight racism? Okay. Last but not least, and this is probably the most difficult, potentially, of all of these axioms, because it impacts everything else, is teaching our staff members, teaching our community to execute. We as teachers write very great lesson plans, but in the writing of our lesson plans and in our planning and in our SMART goals, how do we focus on the goals and execute those goals? And even myself as an independent business owner and a former principal can tell you, the things that are right in front of your face always take precedent over your mid-range, your medium, and long-term goals. So we have a meeting and it's Crystal's going to do this, Dana's going to do this, Jose is going to do that, and we're going to come back and meet Thursday. And everybody is enthused about the prospects of this planning and these ideas. And we get together Thursday and we haven't done what we set out to do. So how do we stay out of the whirlwind, stay out of the small fires or the big fires that we have to put out on a day-to-day basis to make sure we're executing and meeting the big goals of the organization? Okay. If you are picking up and focused on these axioms, my belief is we are simplifying what has been asked of us in terms of the core competencies that we have. And I think, actually I know, it is going to arm you and prepare you to do the work that our children are in desperate need of. One of the things that I just want to leave you with in terms of me being honored to have this time with you is there are not a lot of people breaking down your doors to take your job, right? In any other industry, whether it be sports, entertainment, business, engineering, you name it, there's a critical mass of people who are beating down the door, demanding opportunities for those positions. But we don't see that in education the way we did 20 years ago, the way we did 40 years ago. So I just want to say to you, in your walk and in your journey, always be mindful of this is your walk and this is your journey. And though you may not be where you want to be, you're not where you were last year and you're not where you were yesterday, okay? I think we're gonna skip that slide. I have a few resources. I don't want you all to think that I'm down on books, but one of my mentors, Mr. Baruti Kafele out of New Jersey, wrote 2 books, The Aspiring Principal and The Aspiring Assistant Principal. I think they are great texts in terms of helping teachers with this notion of critical reflection. The number one question that he asks is my building better off with me as an instructional leader? The relationship building that we do, the execution that we do, the making sure our teachers are plugged in and are well taken care of, making sure that we take care of ourselves, all of those things ultimately lead back to student advancement and student achievement, okay? There's another book here called A Race is a Nice Thing to Have. Dr. Janet Helms is a national treasure. This is a great book because it helps people understand how racism impacts them. The book was written for quote unquote middle-class white people, but it is actually an excellent tool to help African Americans, and really anybody for that matter, understand how they have been personally impacted by race. This last book, for those of you who are still in classroom positions or are in assistant principalship positions, The First 90 Days is a great book that talks about road mapping what your first 90 days on your job should look like, so that you find your voice, so that your boss is not carrying you, and you are very clear on what your value add is to your organization. Okay, and everybody will get a copy of this PowerPoint. So if I'm moving too fast, please forgive me. Last reminder, be a student, not a follower. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention my first book, The Burning House, Educating Black Boys in Modern America. It is a referendum on equity and equality in our schools. It gives very practical tips on helping students of color. One of the things I found in the research in this book, a lot of things I knew anecdotally, but looking at the data was startling. And for whatever the indicators that I may have been researching, Black girls were in no better shape. Okay, so I've gotten lots of positive feedback on how the book has helped with the education of Black girls as well. So I'm very happy with that. This is my information. I consider myself to be a very busy person, but if you call me and leave me a message, I'm going to call you back. That is my email. You can always reach out to me via email. My website information is there as well. If you wanted to purchase the book, you can purchase it from my website under the products tab. I will be your thought partner. You can bounce ideas off of me. If you want me to come to your district for whatever reason, that's fine as well. But if you just want to, I don't think that was right, Desmond, should we, right? By all means, reach out to me and I will gladly be your thought partner. The work you're doing is not easy. I cannot say again, after being a principal for 8 years, a principal and an assistant principal for 8 years, how much I commend you on the walk that you are in or the walk that you're pursuing. Okay, that's it for me. I'm out of breath, which probably means I've been talking too long and it's close the business. So I'm gonna shut up and turn it back over to Dana if there are no questions for me. Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry, I forgot. You wrote down your why, okay? I'm asking you to refine your why over the next couple of years in terms of the values that you were espousing in those scenarios. I want you to think about the behaviors that you would have taken to solve or resolve those problems. What values were underlying those behaviors? Because those are the values that you take into your building every day. You want to be conscious of those values because those are the values that you implicitly or explicitly give off every day. Let me give you an example. If you're talking about moving Miss Thomas to another place in the building, you are an enabler. And what you're saying is, it is okay for people not to be student first. My principal did it. The assistant principal is already doing it. So I want you to think about what your response was, right? And does that tie into the why that we all shared? Because if it doesn't, you have an internal values clash and you have to fix it. And an internal values clash means that there's a negative emotion driving the decision. Let me say that one more time. then I promise I'm going to shut up. If there is an eternal values clash between what you said you were going to do and the why that you shared at the beginning of our presentation, there is a negative emotion, probably fear, right, getting in the way. I'm going to shut up now.
I'm sorry, I'm writing my notes down too, Mr. Williams. I'm sorry, hold on. Because I wrote my why down, I didn't share, but I also have a why. And I think that it's important to understand that you never stop growing and developing. And so I'm going to be working on my why and refining my values too as I continue through my leadership journey. So again, thank you guys so much. Let's give our presenter a round of applause. Thank you for leading the learning, Mr. Williams. I hate that we don't have a lot of time together. We're cramming a lot of information in these 2 hours. So I don't know what the spring will entail in terms of COVID, if we'll be able to come together, but we really need to spend some longer hours together so we have time to continue to bond and learn from one another, and for all of this information to sink in and think about how we can go back and implement it in our practices daily. So I hope that you've been able to take away a little bit from the sessions that we've had so far. Some of you have signed up in the Google Drive or in the folder for the book study. So I delivered your books to you, so you should all have a copy of the book. The people that have joined us today, don't worry, I'll get you a book, because I know you probably have no clue about what we're talking about, because technically you're not a part of this cohort. We just kind of pushed you in. And so, because I want to impact as many as I can and support you guys on your journey. So if you haven't had an opportunity, make sure that you sign up, because when we come together in January, we're going to start talking about those first chapters in your book.
What book are you all reading, Dr. Dana?
I'm going to let them tell you. What are we reading? Okay. So the aspiring assistant principals are reading How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. And then what are our aspiring principals reading? Y'all don't have y'all book? Oh. Okay, there you go. Leadership Pipeline. There we go.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that. Okay, awesome, 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 awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
And so one of the things I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to send you a survey, because I want a little feedback from you. So I'm going to send you a survey before you leave next week. Please take time and be honest in your responses to the questions that are going to be in there, because we need to make sure that these pipelines support your development. And if you're not getting what you need, I need to know before we get to the end of this process. And so please be as honest. I have thick skin. I enjoy feedback. I'm going to push you, so I don't mind you pushing me a little bit. I was glad to see that Mr. Williams shared Kafele's book, because I'll be sending you some save the date calendar invites. So we'll be with Kafele on January 13th. Someone else that I think is going to be really good is Christopher Emden. So when we think about how we educate children and make connections to children from various backgrounds, I think it'll be good spending time with him. So I will send you a calendar invite so that our save the date, so you'll know. 2 of our meetings or 2 additional meetings, because we can't possibly get everything into these 3 to 5 hour sessions that we're having after school. So you're going to have to really commit. So 2 of our presenters, and I'm not going to share the names right now, but we'll be meeting with them on a Saturday. And it'll only be 2 hours on a Saturday morning, but I'm trying to expose you to as many great practices as I can around leadership. And just like Mr. Williams, you want to make connections and network. So when you do get stuck on something, or you have a question, or you need clarification around something, these are people that you might want to tap to talk to give you feedback. And so hopefully you're taking advantage of these opportunities to build relationships with people all over the world. So again, thank you, Mr. Williams. Is there anywhere that we can give you feedback? Do you have a link where we can go in and rate you, or anything that we can do?
You know what? I do not. What I would say to you is, normally we would have a survey for you all to fill out, but just given the turnaround time, I'm surprised you all didn't complain about typos in the presentation. I just didn't.
They were tired.
time. And I had a flat tire when I left here yesterday. I had a flat tire when I woke up this morning. So it's been an interesting 24 hours. But in terms of giving me feedback, I would say send me an email and just say, Desmond, this is what I thought. I had questions about this. You all have some super heavy hitters. Chris is magnificent. He's going to take you to church. Brother Kafele is a friend and a mentor. So you all are really set up for success. And I would say about Brother Kafele, if you had the opportunity, right, and I'm going to leave you with this, and I promise I'm going to shut up. If you had the opportunity to take someone's entire career and it got condensed into a 225-page book that you could read in 9 to 10 hours, why wouldn't you take advantage of that? There's so much to learn about what to do, but there's so much to learn about what not to do. So I would just say, come with an open mind, take notes, because there's so much to get from people like that. And if I had people like that, or people like Dana facilitating workshops like this, I probably would not have been beating my head against the wall trying to be something that I wasn't. I would have been able to define leadership for myself. So I'm gonna shut up now.
But I think that's key though, because the purpose of all of this is you're still developing as who you are as a leader. And so hearing from all of these people regarding their experiences will kind of help you build the pieces to your puzzle, right? Like you don't really know yet because you haven't encountered everything that you're going to encounter. So hopefully you're taking bits and pieces and not necessarily preparing to be like any one of our visitors who join us, but you're just kind of picking and choosing what might work best for you as you continue on this journey. So I'm going to stop talking as well because it's 5:10. I've kept you a little bit late. So be on the lookout for the survey. As always, if there's something that I can do for you in between now and the time that we come together, you think of something, feel free to reach out to me and let me know. Mr. Williams shared his information, so we are going to get him back to, he said Aldine. We're going to get you back to Aldine, Mr. Williams.
Aldine, I'm so
Aldine.
But listen, I wore my Texas A&M maroon, so does that help?
No, because you have some Panthers, some TSU, you have everybody on this call. No.
I have on burnt orange socks. I just won't show them.
All right. Well, I won't keep you guys any longer. Take care of yourselves. We have 2 more days this week, 4 more instructional days next week. Celebrate your teachers. Make sure your students, you love on them because we're going to be sending them home for 2 weeks, and some of them will be going home to some great places, and then some of them are really going to need our support when they come back because they're going to miss you guys as well. So make sure you take care of your teachers and our students for the next couple of days. So have a good one, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Take care. God bless you. Have a safe, happy holiday, and take care of yourself so you can take care of others.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. You all have a great evening.
Okay, you too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Ariola, you mind staying on for a moment? I have a question for you, if that's okay. And Mr. Williams, you can stay too, it's no problem.
Can I debrief with Mr. Williams and connect back with you in just 2 minutes?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'll send you a Google and we can come back on in about 2 minutes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That was good. I think it's just not enough time, you know, like.
Not enough time.
Yeah, but that's okay.
I really would, if we were continuing, we would have spent an entire day on a management of those emotions that, because I heard some really good answers, but then there were some, So helping people flesh out their values and understand what we're explicitly and implicitly communicating to the other adults in the building.
Right.
It's, you know, it's all for the sake of the betterment of our children, but it can be damning, if you will, to look in those mirrors at times. And I was a person who had a lot of emotionality. um, in terms of being in school leadership for the first time, because I went to a school with a lot of bullies, meaning there were people in my building that were, for instance, that Miss Thomas was a lady named Janet Tender, and she had been at the school for 44 years, longer than I had been on the planet. And her grandson came up to the school and was like, "Yo, I heard you trying to get rid of my," you know. So there was, so like that emotionality, like how do you live out your values when they're under attack? And no one teaches us that. It's just like, well, you kind of acquiesce, or, you know, I'm gonna try to send them to another school, which
But I
doesn't
think
always work.
you lose your popularity, you know, you might lose a few friends, but at the end of the day, you have to kind of stand firm in what you believe in and don't waver from that. So I like the quote you made about the internal values clashing with some type of negative emotion, and it being fear. And that's why you build those relationships. And when I talk about building the relationships, it's not going to happy hour with people, right? And one of the cohort members that was on the call, that's kind of where he is. And his survey data that we just recently collected on him indicated that he had the ability to build relationships. Like that was his strength. But he shared with us that that's what kind of prevents him from actually having those coaching conversations. And so we have to help him shift from, you know, how did you build that relationship? Because yes, if you were hanging out with them, it is going to be hard. You know, when we say build relationships, we're talking about professional relationships, you know, and not really allowing too much of outside of work crossover into the workday. So I agree.
That's toxic. And yeah, I can't say I've been there, because I built a wall around me, but I know a lot of, so I'm not going to bore you, but I heard Tiger Woods say one time, Dana, he said, having children, this was probably like 2006-ish. He said, having children, getting married, and burying a parent really grow you up. And this was maybe a year or two after his father had passed, and he was already married. I don't think he had children at that point, but he was just commenting on the emotional growth of not having his father as a safety net. But I would add in there managing people. It's like, what the fuck is this supposed to look like?
Right.
Like, these people are crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And like that miss, I don't even know what name I used, but that teacher who was showing up late, that was me. And I was scared. So I was like, you got to be here on time, because Sun Tzu said in the Art of War, you treat everyone the same.
Yeah.
And I started to ask you guys, because Jimmy Johnson, who used to be the coach of the Cowboys, he said, treat everybody the same. I don't do that. And the reporter asked him, he said, so if Troy Aikman fell asleep in a meeting, what would you do? He was like, I would give him a pillow. And that just blew my mind, because I said, that flies in the face of everything I was ever taught about leadership. It's like, no, you treat everyone the same. That's what equality and justice is. And it's like, no, you don't treat people the same, because they're not the same.
Right.
And if your staff members can't handle that, you probably have the wrong staff. But like I said, it's a journey. One day I'm going to write that book. Because I messed up a lot. We did a lot of good, but it was some stuff I was like, dude, why you weren't supposed to do that? Like, your pants unzipped and you giving a speech? Come on, man.
But the good thing, you can talk about it, right? And you can prevent other people from doing it. I do the same thing. I'm like, no, I mean, I'm going to let you try it, but I'm going to tell you right now where you're going to end up. And so that's the good thing. It's like you've made so many mistakes that, you know, you can pretty much, and I always tell them, tell me what it is, and I guarantee you I've made that same mistake, right? And I can kind of navigate you around it this time. But tell me what it is. I've made every mistake there is to make out there for the most part. And so, yeah.
So I don't want to keep you. I had a thought after we got off the phone. I just didn't have the time to generate the invoice. I've spent the last 24 hours, Dana, making sure I could get you guys what you needed, and then dealing with my car. Do you think, would you be up for, I'm going to send the invoice. Would you want to buy like 5 or 6 of my books to give to random people?
I could do that, yes.
So I'm going to send, the invoice is going to be for $800.
Okay.
And then I will send you the link to my website.
Okay.
And when you purchase the books, I'll probably, not probably, I have to go to the post office on Saturday.
Okay.
It's going to be crowded, but I can drop the books in the mail on Saturday, and just purchase 5.
Okay.
And I'll drop 6
Okay.
in the mail. And if you know who you want to give them to, email me their names and I'll sign it.
Okay, I'll do that.
If you're not sure, just, that's fine too.
Okay, but it may be my aspiring principal cohort, so, okay.
Okay, yeah. And if you all want me to, I had that book, that first book that the one group is reading. I can't find it, but I love book talks.
Yeah, how to lead when you're not in charge.
Yeah. But anyway, I thank you for having me.
Thank you. And you have my email, right? To send me that. You have the email. You can email it to the invoice to me.
Okay. So I'm going to send you the invoice, and in a separate email, I'll send you the link to my website for the book purchases.
Okay.
So what do you think the turnover is on the payment? It's like a month?
Okay, yes. I know it is a month, but I'll take care of it before then.
Well, no, I was asking. Sometimes it's 4 months, so.
No, it won't be a month. It might be a week.
Okay.
It'll be your Christmas gift.
Hey, we got bills, and apparently I need new tires. So there's.
But I'm also going to give you information on how to become a vendor in Aldine. So it's a long process. Kafele never finished it, and so that's why we're kind of going through Harris County to get, for him to present, because he never finished. He was like, I'm not doing all that. This is too much. So I'll share with you.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. He and then he did, I don't know if you know, but he was, I don't know if it's over now, but he was conducting those free aspiring assistant principal workshops
on Saturday,
starting in July. And I don't know where he is with that. So if he's saying all this content for free, I know he's not going through no RFP process.
Every Saturday morning, I think at 10:30. Yeah.
So
I've been on him.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I just like hearing him speak. I met him in North Carolina in the summer of 2019 at a conference, and he was.
They're really good to be free. They are really good. Like all of my principals know you need to go. That's where you need to be on a Saturday. You need to be logged into Twitter or Facebook listening to Kafele. So.
Yeah, he's really good because he's a student of history.
Yeah.
And he doesn't approach this anti-racist. He doesn't approach it like, he's like, you all don't know Black people's history, and you can't really have a conversation about teaching our kids until you know who you're teaching.
Right.
And to me, that's the end of the conversation. I'm like, well, that works for me,
Right.
So, but yeah, anything you need from me, Dana, just reach out. And again, encourage folk if they need a thought partner. I know lots of people who would be willing to help kind of navigate some of those spaces if I don't have the time and things like that. But I'm willing to help as much as my time allows.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Will you share the presentation? Because that's the other thing. They always ask for a copy of it. Or can you? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll share it with
No problem at all. After I proofread it, I'll email it to you.
That's okay. Sounds good. Okay, I'll be waiting on your email.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dana.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.